So the next topic is actually very interesting. We've got a homegrown boy who's gone on to like do something really cool. We've got Glen Martin from Tathvamas Studios. Bridging. The topic is bridging worlds, transitioning from software engineering to game development. Please welcome Glen. And Glen is from Kochi, so Glen to moon front. Huh? Yeah, you can see.
Okay. Hi, guys. So my name is Glen. Hold on. Yeah, this seems to not work, I guess. No. Okay, now it worked. I think it needs you to be around. Okay, thanks. All right. I'm Glen. I'm from Perumbavoor. I'm a CS grad. I passed out in 2015 from NIT Calicut. Then I've been working in like different tech companies for like quite some time now. I've been doing software engineering for almost all of my career, which is not really long. It's not that long. I'm not that old yet. I've worked in Oracle for a couple of years. Then, all my friends were doing startups, so I decided, okay, I'll do startup as well. So I got together with a couple of my friends and seniors and did a startup. It was an AI startup before ChatGPT, so it was like a somewhat cool thing back then. Then we got acquired in 2019. Then I worked in the company that acquired us for like 5 more years. Nothing to do with game design or development, but I always used to play a lot of games, and this is something that I wanted to do, all my life. And now I am a full-time game developer. I never thought that this day would come, but it has actually finally arrived here, and that's primarily thanks to Sony's India Hero project. I'll get to that through the course of this talk. And this is the first time I'm talking in front of a group of people, so I am super nervous. I might make some mistakes, so like bear with me. So I represent Tathvamas Studios. So that's my studio. That's the studio that I founded with a couple of friends last year. We're based out of Bangalore. Our singular focus is to create amazing single player experiences for PC and console. We're thinking about mobile, not there yet, but we'll get there eventually. You can check us out at tathvamasi.com. We are a very fresh, very new studio. We're making our first game right now. I'll talk more about the game as well as we progress. So this talk is specifically for absolute beginners. Like I'm going to talk about my journey from how I went from a software development career to a game development career right now. I'm not an expert in game development. I've been probably doing it for like a very small amount of time. So I don't know if you are the right target audience for this, probably because all of you have probably more game dev experience than I do. But if that's the case, it's probably boring for you. Otherwise, if this helps you, great. But just bear with me for a little bit more time. So the first question was, why game dev? Why do I choose to do this? So the first question I asked people is like, hey, you like making games. What does it feel like to, no, you like playing games. What does it feel like to make games, right? And the real answer I got from most of them was, it is insanely hard. Like, I don't even know why I, do this anymore. Right. But I was naive back then. I'm not saying I'm not naive now, but I was more naive back then. And then I did not really listen to it. So I decided, hey, this is what I want to do with my life, and then like jumped headfirst into it. So the reason I'm doing game dev is, first, I was always interested in gaming. My father had a like a DTP shop. Sorry, like a DTP shop back in the day. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone young enough to not understand what a DTP shop is. So it's a place where you take printouts. So because of that, we had a PC at home, and it was a potato PC. So it was bad, and we tried to get. As many games as possible that could run on that PC, and that's where the whole journey started. Of course, my parents wouldn't buy me games because, middle class family, where nobody's buying games. So you figure out how to play games irrespective of that. And that's probably the beginning of computer literacy journey as such. Like, you figure out how to do these things yourself. The only thing we had at that point was internet, and you really had to figure out all this stuff yourself. So Thankfully, when I was in the 8th or 9th standard, my uncle gifted me a PS2, and that was like a big turning point. Like I could finally have something that I could play, like really good games. But again, PS2 games are hell of expensive, and I'm not really, nobody's really buying me PS2 games. So then what happened was obviously my father used to work in Bangalore at that time. DTP shop had shut down by that time. So I went with him to Bangalore one fine day, went to SP Road, and then figured out a way to, do certain things to the PS2 so that you can, figure out a way to play games cheap. And on that place, like where I went to get this thing installed, this guy did it, and then like I was telling him, hey, I need to test this. Like I don't know if you've done it right or not. And he's like, okay, fine. He took a random disc off the shelf and then put it in and then tested it. Right. And that game was the original God of War. I sat in that shop and played for like I guess an hour before the guy actually kicked me out. And at that point, I decided, hey, this is what games could be. Like that's the point where I understood, right? This was a real eye-opening experience for me. Like all the games I've played until that point were all these like really poorly made, shitty games that could run on my PC. But at this point, this sort of opened my eyes. Like, okay, this is what interactive, immersive storytelling could be, right? And that was an amazing experience. And obviously, Pokemon Fire Red, again, GBA, piracy, and all that stuff. I don't think I'm supposed to say that out in the video, but, but it just happened. So, all of these things happen. So then there is my interest in software engineering. So I was not so interested in coding while I was in college, because college you don't really go there to study, right? Like it's just like that. So I thankfully I got an internship from college, and that's when I actually got into development. My manager there in that company was really nice. She actually introduced me to software development as such, and not really liking writing toy programs to reverse a string or some stuff like that. Like they don't really make sense to me. But that's when I really understood what software development was, and then how you could, create things. And that's when I started really liking it, right? Like you could, write some things on a screen, and you could actually get it to do certain things for you, and that always felt really nice. And usually it never works, or the first time, but you figure out how to make it work, right? And that was always very interesting for me to do. So then I understood that game dev is the right intersection of these two things. Like I had at least like one skill that I could use to really take my passion forward. I was always interested in gaming, but I didn't really know how to get started. So at one point I started thinking, like I've done software engineering for all my life. I need to do something else with my life, like something interesting. I always wanted to get into this, but I thought, what is my one way to start getting into it? And then game development is sort of interlinked with software development as well, because if you know how to code, you can do some stuff with it, right? So that's when I thought, okay, maybe this is like a good fit. Maybe I should give it a shot. I was still on the fence, trying to figure out whether I should do it or not. And then what happened was COVID-19. All of us were stuck at our homes, nothing to do. So at that point, for my birthday, my wife actually gifted me a PS4, right? And that came with the new God of War. And I'm like, okay, this is a sign. Like, this is a sign from God that, okay, this is how I should probably take it. And I played through the entire game. And after that, that sort of reignited my passion, because I had sort of fallen off the gaming bandwagon by that time, because the only game I used to play in college was Dota, and that was sucking the life out of me. And I was like, I'm a recovered Dota addict right now, so I don't really play that anymore. But now I play a lot of new, different games, so that's at least going good for me. So at that point, I really need to thank my wife for this, because she's the reason why I'm standing here right now. And because of that PS4 and God of War, this interest came back in me, and I started doing it. So at that point, I decided, okay, like now it's serious. Now you can start doing something about it. I have to start doing something about it, right? So then I opened Google, and then I just typed in the word like how to make a game. So then things come up, right? Then there are pages upon pages of people telling, hey, you have to learn Unity, or you have to learn Unreal and all that stuff, right? The simple decision that took me to Unity was that people just said Unity is simpler, like you can learn it faster. I'm like, sure, like that works for me. I don't really care about a lot of other things. All I wanted to do was just, make a random game. That's all. So because of that, I chose Unity. So this is sort of my journey, and this is something that probably all of you would have already gone through. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but I'll just speed run through it. So round one was obviously YouTube University. So you open up YouTube and then you just type how to make a game, right? And then you get a lot of videos on YouTube for Unity tutorials, start building stuff, and all that stuff. But what happened was they didn't really give me any sort of structure or any mental model on how to like go forward, right? I I I went through there's a term for it. It's called tutorial hell, right? Like you keep watching tutorials, like you keep watching tutorials one after the other, and then you feel like you're making some progress, but you're really not. You're just watching YouTube videos for fun. Right. So I was stuck in that state for some time. Then I knew that, okay, I had to like do something productive with it. And then what I did was I moved to Udemy. In Udemy, though, there's this course structure to it. Like someone is asking me to do shit. And that's probably why I actually ended up doing it. And then what I did was in Udemy, I looked for a Unity course, and I made a couple of games from it. There was a 2D platformer, there was an infinite jumper kind of thing. And that actually helped me a lot because by that time, I really understood what Unity was and I had a mental model about it more than like deep specific knowledge, right? Like that was, I think, a good starting point for me. So now what I did is I came back to YouTube, right? Now this guy needs no introduction because I think pretty much everybody knows this guy, right? So this time around, what I knew was, okay, I've made all these toy games in YouTube, from Udemy. Now I want to tackle like a real game, right? Like I thought I was way above my head. Like I thought that I'm going to make a roguelike dungeon crawler with procedurally generated levels, right? I was stupid. So basically what happened was I started making it and then I learned about the things I did not know about it, right? Because the courses are so structured, they only tell you things that you have to learn, right? But only when you start making something, you'll know what you don't really know, right? And that's when this guy came in. So anything that I really needed to know, I'll just like, Google it and there would be a Brackeys video about it, right? And then this guy literally, saved my life because otherwise I wouldn't have probably gotten here. So this is essentially what helped me learn better, right? I needed some structure in the beginning so that at least I'll get a mental model because I was going all over the place and then I was just stuck in this tutorial hell's place, right? I was just watching YouTube videos doing nothing. So Udemy helped me get started at that point where it gave me some structure and then gave me some objectives and goals to get started and do something with me, with my own skills. And then some sort of self-paced stuff where you set your own goal and try to make your own game. That helps a lot because beyond courses, there's a lot to game development that you'll only get to know when you actually make one. So that's there. And next is this. So essentially at this point, I only had like, how do I say, Unity knowledge as such, right? I don't really know how to make games or design games or even think about games, right? So this is where YouTube did its magic. And like one fine day, again, like I was stuck in YouTube, right? Like so one fine day, YouTube gives me a suggestion about this channel called GMTK. And one of the videos was, it's called Boss Keys. It was about like the world design of Hollow Knight, right? Because I had just started playing Hollow Knight at that time. And I was hooked since then. All right. So what made me what attracted me a lot to this guy was he's not really talking about game development as such. He's not talking about Unity or code or assets or anything like that. He's talking more about analyzing games or why games are made in a certain way or why games are not made in a certain way, right? And that was extremely eye-opening for me at that point because I had never thought about game design as a sort of what do you call it? A thoughtful or well thought out process, right? I always thought that game design was, hey, you have an idea, you just make a game, that's it, right? But I learned that that's not the case, and there is a lot to be considered around it, and there's a lot you can think about it. So this guy, Mark Brown from GMTK, second guy who was a big inspiration and helped me a lot in my journey as well. And one other good thing that happened from this YouTube journey is that I started exploring a lot more indie games. But until that point, I had not been playing a lot of indie games, right? And I was not even aware of a lot of indie games at this point. But this helped me identify, find, and sort of expand my palette, right? Like I started playing a lot of indie games. I started getting a lot of ideas. And most importantly, what that helped me was I understood that these kind of games can be made. Right, like I mean, when you're thinking about like in Yadu's talk, there was this thing about like how everyone wants to make GTA as their first game, right? Like I was also there. Like I thought that that's just the thing you could do, right? But playing games like these actually help me understand that hey, there is a market for this. People are playing these games, people are making these games, and people are buying these games, right? This seems like a good thing for you to get started with, because at that point, because when I tried to make the roguelike procedurally generated dungeon crawler, I knew that that was way too hard for me to make, right? So I probably decided I'll make something simpler that people would actually want to play. So that is how I actually got the confidence to start. So this is the final bit of it, so which is deciding on a game idea and building a team. So most of these things are specific to my experience. I don't know if it'll actually matter to you, but I'll essentially go through this. The first thing is make what you love. So I am an extremely lazy person who requires like a lot of motivation to do pretty much anything. So I knew that if I don't make a game that I personally, in a genre that I personally enjoy, I will not finish that game, right? So the first thing that I did was, okay, this is a genre that I love. I'm going to make a game in this genre, and then I'm going to enjoy playing it. At least I'll enjoy playing it. So that's the reason why I've decided to make a game that I really like. Second is understanding the scope. So again, when you read about other people's experience in building games and everything like that, one common advice that I got was don't try to make the first game that you build your dream game, because that's never really going to happen. Primarily because you don't have the skill set, the experience, the money, or the connections required to make it. Right. So always consider your first game as like a stepping stone to, where you want to be. Like for example, like for a random thought, like my dream game would be like, I don't know, Assassin's Creed set in like Portuguese settlements in ancient Kerala, but I can't make that. Right? I don't have the money, the budget, or the people to do that. Like, but I'm making a 2D game instead. But that's essentially it. Like you understand the skill set and resources that you have and try to scope it down. One other important advice that I got was it doesn't really matter that if you're a developer from India or something like that, you're not getting any brownie points for it. Like you might get some brownie points for it, but you're not getting any sales out of it, right? So essentially, the game that you make has to compete with games that are made elsewhere in their own genre or in their own turf, essentially, right? So if you're making a AAA game, be ready to fight the EAs and Ubisofts on their own same footing, all right? So you figure out something that you can make so that it can compete on its own with established titles in the genre or market space. And obviously, understanding the market. So ideally, we should be building a game where we know that there are players interested. Sorry. Ideally, we should be building a game where we know there are players interested in the genre, or there aren't enough developers in that market. Like there are definitely like genres or subgenres where there are literally hundreds and thousands of games being released every year on Steam, but nobody really plays them because it's like a dead genre. So probably don't make a game in that genre now, right? Initially, we started. So these are two websites that I access all the time to basically understand and do my own research. How to Market a Game and VG Insights both have been mentioned by Yavu before. So How to Market a Game runs a blog, which is an insanely nice blog. It's probably the best blog that I've read about marketing your game, or even understanding the market for a game. Like what kind of genres work, what does the user base on Steam look like, and all that stuff. He runs very interesting deep dives into all of this. VG Insights is a dashboard, like a tool that you can see in the bottom. You could put in, it basically has a lot of data about sales of games. Like it tells you how many units were sold in what geographies and during what time and whatnot. So if you are a bit of data inclined person, this is an invaluable tool. You can really understand your competition and sort of understand what markets they are from and what price point they are selling and what kind of sales you can expect. So we started with the Metroidvania because that's what we wanted to make, but it turned out to be a good market when I learned how to do these things. So we're sticking to Metroidvania now. The last thing is building a team. So the first thing is something that you must have heard all the time. So if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, build a team. So essentially, uh, the biggest thing is I had to understand what my weaknesses were and sort of get people to cover for those weaknesses. I knew that I couldn't draw or I couldn't create good art, right? But from all the research and all that stuff, I understood that good art is going to help us sort of stand out, right? And it might be a good selling point for us. So I obviously had to get someone to join the team who could draw really well. Right. Same thing with music. Like I mean, you could easily synthesize some music, but it's not going to sound really good. So I need someone who can do it. Right. So essentially, it's about understanding what you lack and then bringing in folks from outside to sort of round out your skills and weaknesses so that you can build a team. And the last bit is somewhat important. That's something that I've learned from my own experience, my short experience, is that you can delegate pretty much everything else, but you can't delegate vision, right? Because the problem with that is the everybody in the team would want to like pull the game in like a lot of different directions. The problem with that is you try to make a game that's for everyone, but that ends up being a game for no one, right? Like it becomes like a really bland, boring game. So there needs to be someone who has to take some tough decisions, and then you can't delegate that vision. And finally, the most important part of the slide. So this is India Hero Project. This is the only reason that I'm standing here right now. So India Hero Project is PlayStation's initiative to build a game dev ecosystem, or like to develop studios within India. It's got like a 10-year plan. It's like an amazing opportunity. We've got the person managing this sitting right here. That guy's name is Sujit. He's the only guy here in a suit. So you can easily find him. So that's Sujit. He's managing India Hero project. So what do you get out of IHP? The first thing is you get recoupable development advances for making your game, which is essentially you give them a budget. If they approve it, if they like it, they'll give you money to make the game. But you also sort of have to give it back. But making the game itself is like the biggest thing, right? So that's essentially what recoupable development advances mean. The second is also amazing. So you get access to vendors from the industry and training to help your team. So through Sony, through Indie Hero Project, I've met a lot of interesting people and really stalwarts of the industry, like really amazing, talented, experienced people. And that was amazing for me because I don't have any formal training. I have a ton of doubts about everything that I do. And this is amazing. Like I could like bother these people with all the questions that I have. And the third point is like, how do you apply to HP? So yeah, I'll share these slides with you. There's a way you can access these slides. But essentially what you can do is just Google India Hero Project, and it's probably the first link. Submissions are open now. They close on 31st of July, so you can apply. All you need to apply is, you need two things. One, you need a vertical slice to apply, which is essentially like a small demo of the game, or like, demonstrating the core concept of what is that you're making. And you need to be incorporated as a legal entity, which essentially you need to have a company, that's all. So yeah, please do go check it out. And this is like final piece of advice. So basically, I don't think the first part applies to any of you guys here because I think all of you are game devs. But if not, the first piece of advice is to just start. Like if you're looking for a sign to start, this is that sign. Like just start doing something. Right, like I mean, I used to be this person who always thought that, hey, I need like 10 different things to fall in place together so that I'll just start, right? Like that was probably the worst phase of my life, and I was stuck in this tutorial hell and like this swarm of indecision all my life, right? And then one day you just decide, hey, you're gonna start small. That's the second advice. You're gonna start small. Like don't start with like a giant goal in your head, because the first time, the second time, or the third time you fail, because the goal is so big, you're gonna get demotivated and you're gonna quit. Right? Trust me, I have done this like 100 times. I'm an expert on quitting now. So I know about this. So essentially, the first goal was to just start small, like have something that is attainable, but still, realistic, and then work towards it. And third is basically focus on small wins initially and build up from there. Because what I've understood here is that momentum is everything, right? Like, and I don't know if it applies to everyone, but at least for me, momentum is everything, right? So if I start with small wins so that I get that momentum, so that I have that energy and willpower to keep going. So yeah, this is the game that we are building. It's called Suri the Seventh Note. It's the first commercial game that we are making, which is very stressful. It's a 2D Metroidvania game. It's set in mythical India. It's a rhythm hybrid game as well. That's a really tough design position that we have put ourselves in. It's it's complicated, but it's very fun. It's insanely fun to develop. It's inspired from games like Hollow Knight, 140, or Hi-Fi Rush. You can Google the game or you can check it out at surithegame.com. And yeah, I also have this habit of collecting references from all over the place. So what I do is I have this Notion page where I've just put in links of random interesting things I find on the internet. So it's got like lists of publishers, lists of game dev resources, and all the other stuff in it. So scanning this QR code will give you this presentation, where you can obviously go to the last page and then get that link. So yeah, that's it. That's my presentation. Any questions?
Are you sure it's the first time you spoke on stage?
Yeah.
Didn't sound like it, but really cool presentation
Thank you. Thank you.
and very inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions for Glen? പെരുമ്പാവൂരിൽ വീട്ടെവിടെ അതല്ല വേറെ എന്തെങ്കിലും
I think you're a very good storyteller. You've told this your whole experience as a good story, and that is important for becoming a game developer. So could you more elaborate on that? Have you been practicing storytelling or something like that?
Actually, that's a really good question. So the game that is here right now, right? It's actually the second game, right? Because the first game I started doing that, right? I started writing a story, right? And you know what happened? That's all it was. It just stayed a story, right? It never became a game. Right. What happened was, I started writing this story about self-discovery and this journey, and it was pretty trippy also. But what ended up happening was, it became so focused on the story that it became so boring to play, and it ended up in a position where you need like walls of text in every screen of the game just to explain what's going on, and that was a really bad game, right? So that I mean, thankfully we didn't spend a lot of time on that, and that by that time I hadn't really hired anyone, so only thing I was wasting was my own time, which is worthless. So what I did at that point was I chucked that story. That's another thing. Like, you have to sort of take decisions at certain points to like Yadu said, like, throw away your baby with the bathwater, right? I mean, that story was so special to me, but then that's not a good game. So I decided to stop on that and then instead start from the game first, right? Like, start making mechanics and start making interesting things that end up becoming a good core gameplay loop, right? Like, that was experience. That was the experience that I wanted to sell. And I understood that if I can make that, I can always build a story around it. All right, like I knew that I could build a story around it. So that's the direction that we're taking right now. Because the story for that game is not even complete. It's only like a very short draft. So that's where we are.
I've seen these new startups or games where the mythical India or mythical aspects of India is being popularized.
Yeah.
So did you go specifically into that, like?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, I mean, this I've told to Sujit on our first interview as well. So one thing I didn't really like was when I was doing this indie exploration and everything, right? Like, any Metroidvania game you take or any kind of 2D game you take, so if you've got a castle or a fort, it always looks like a European fort. Like, that's not the kind of things that we've seen, right? If you look at a forest, you always see a different kind of forest, right? So I always wanted to make things that feel more natural, or probably natural to me, right? So that's why we've really thought about going the whole Indian mythology route. And also, I will not deny that there is good marketing potential in it. I'm not denying that fact. There is good marketing potential in it, and that's just a cherry on top, I'd say. We're trying to stay specifically away from like well-known mythological stories, but rather we're trying to focus on places and other characters and situations from those, and then trying to create a world around it, not really have a story picked from mythology directly as is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question.
Hi, Glenn.
Hello.
Jiku here. Nice talk.
Hi.
First of all, I'm so happy to know that you have a wife who gifted you a PS4. It's still a dream for many. I mean, those who are married, of course. But in one of the slides that you mentioned, you wanted to make a Metroidvania game. Like, let's say there's a genre of your choice, and when you did the market research, the market research also suggested you continue with the game.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there are a few people who really make games as part of their passion genre, right? Forget everything that I told. Just imagine, what if the market told the otherwise?
Okay.
Would you still go ahead and make the Metroidvania game?
Okay.
Because if you go ahead and make it, you will be happy about yourself because you're making something that you really love making.
Yeah.
But you may not be making a lot of money because the market is very niche for that.
Yeah.
But if you go the other way around, you might be making a lot of money, but you're not making what you love making.
Got it. Yeah, that's such a big question to ask for a newbie, man. But I'll tell you. So, I had actually considered this a little bit, right? As I said, like I was lucky that the market was doing good for Metroidvanias in the past couple of years. But there are other genres that are doing way better than Metroidvanias as well. Like for example, like the last year, the best genre was Forex strategy. Right, like you release any game into Forex strategy genre, and it would be selling like hotcakes. You'd make a lot of money out of it, right? But at that point, there was a decision to make. Like, do I really go and make something in a Forex strategy which I don't really play and don't really like? Like, no. Right. But the other part of the question where you said, what if Metroidvania genre was the bad genre, where it didn't have enough money, right? Then I would probably change the genre because I'm a realist at that point, right? I'll probably make the change the genre and find something that fits well into this probable revenue projection and also my interest as well, right? I'll probably not make a Forex game because I don't even enjoy them. Why will I make a Forex game? But there would be other genres like action adventure RPGs, even 2D are like doing really well. They have been doing really well like for a long time, right? I'd probably choose one of those genres, right? So it's essentially going to be that. Like I understand the difference between like passion and like having to make money. When I started off like a couple of years ago, I was in the whole passion phase, but now I do understand that you can only make your dream game, which is like the third game you're going to make, if the first game gets out of the studio, right, and actually make some money. So I've always been a realist about that. Thank you.
Okay. Small question, quick answer.
Yeah, so great talk. I just wanted to ask you, talked about the game, how you went about it, all your dreams. Critical element is like how you went about building the team that is going to share your vision, how you found the people who will be working with you, what that journey was like. Can be brief.
Oh, it was a horrible journey. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm really good at it, but I have some lessons to share. The most important lesson that I learned was having a sort of shared commonality or common ground between the team members that you choose is fundamentally much more important than raw talent, right? Like that's the most important thing I'll say, because the first time that I hired a art director, it was a really weird way I found that art director. I walked into a cafe and saw some artwork and talked to the guy and figured out like he's doing stuff, and then I asked him to come join the team and everything. Insanely talented guy. But what happened was that person had to quit the team. Right, like there was always friction and it was not really working out really well. Right. Then what happened was, at that point I understood that it's more important to find someone who actually understands your vision and also is somewhat thinking in similar wavelengths as you, right? Because it's always good and happy when things are going well, right? But when things are going bad, that's when everybody starts showing their horns, right? And then that's when all these problems start to arise. So it's better to have teammates you could go through really tough times together than have really talented teammates who are going to have a problem when times are tough. So that's what I think about it. I don't know if that answered your question though, but
Right.
that's
Just
that,
wanted your experience.
yeah.
Thank you, Glenn. A big round of applause for Glenn. We wish you all the very best, Glenn.